Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The new CDC guidance for people who test positive for COVID-19. The government health agency says if people are COVID positive and have no symptoms, they can now isolate for 5 days instead of 10. And they don't need a negative test to end that isolation period. They should still wear masks around others for another 5 days. New research shows the Omicron variant, the most common COVID strain in America right now, is most infectious roughly 2 days before and 3 days after the first symptoms.
It's a very interesting development in the world of the CDC and their guidelines. This is actually, by the way, Craig Collins filling in, Chad Benson Show. This is actually interesting for several reasons. One, I was playing audio just yesterday of Dr. Ashish Jha saying exactly this, that you can, quarantine for just 5 days, not 10. And then actually we also have this audio of Dr. Fauci saying that breakthrough cases are very, very mild, and that, honestly, Omicron cases are mild in general. I know Dr. Fauci is a guy that said some other things recently that prove he's not always a man who just represents science as his a living embodiment. He certainly has political connections, or at least political reasons that he gives certain information and hides others. And I think that's utterly confirmed after the latest flip-flop. But first, this is valuable, I think, because it is actual science.
And many of the Omicron cases, interestingly, are either without symptoms or minimally symptomatic, particularly the breakthrough infections that you get when people have been vaccinated.
That's right, especially the breakthrough cases, which there are lots of. And actually, I saw also recently some of the thoughts behind Omicron. And again, take this with a grain of salt, because I'm not a medical expert by any stretch of the imagination, is that the reason it causes more mild symptoms is that even though it's really great at evading any sort of vaccine or other protection, natural immunity, and infecting you, it's terrible at moving to your lungs. And if you remember that, the conversations about COVID for quite some time is that essentially you kind of get sick twice. You'd get sick, you'd start to feel better as the illness would move from different parts of your body into your lungs more significantly for those who got seriously ill and those who passed away. So it's interesting to think that this newest mutation, this newest variant of COVID has changed itself enough to infect you much easier, but is terrible at actually making it a serious illness. This should be great news. This should be something we're talking about a lot. I know that we're still throwing out caution, and I'm not trying to say to go completely insane, but this should be a conversation we're having often. And certainly some of the restrictions that are still debated, some of the mandates that exist for vaccination in some parts of our country just seem to make no sense if the most prevalent variant can evade any sort of vaccine immunity. So you still get sick, you still transmit it to others, and it's not a serious illness comparatively to the other forms of COVID that existed before. But here's the biggest Fauci thing in the last 24 hours, in my opinion. And I have the audio that I was playing a bunch yesterday that I can play again, which is one of a few times I think Fauci absolutely said that he was for vaccine mandates. But now he's pulling away from that. Now he's trying to back up to change the conversation, mostly because he got in trouble, I would assume, mostly because someone in the administration said this is bad for us. And again, that's political influence changing the way in which you talk about something. But this is the most recent Jim Acosta interview from the other night with Fauci, where he resists. And Jim tries, I think, 3, maybe 4 times to get Fauci to say the thing that obviously he booked him to say, that vaccine mandates for domestic air travel are good. And obviously Fauci is no longer willing to say it. I just thought the back and forth sparring was so intriguing, because Acosta must have been surprised. At the end of the interview, Fauci had said it on his station several times in other places, but wouldn't say it this time because, again, he's been probably told not to.
And let's talk about vaccine mandates. You've been saying that vaccine mandates for domestic flights should be considered, should be seriously considered. Is that something that President Biden is seriously considering? Is it something that the administration is considering?
No,
I'm sorry, even just the clearing of the voice and the getting ready for this conversation is significant to me. Yeah.
No, what I said, Jim, was that everything that comes up as a possibility, we put it on the table and we consider it. That does not mean that it is going to be likely to happen. Right now, I don't think people should expect that we're going to have a requirement in domestic flights.
All right, you know what? I have to stop it. That's not what he said. And that's not what he said several times, including, I believe, to John Carl when he was talking to him yesterday. And I played this audio, or I think this might have been a couple days ago that they had this conversation. He said something totally different. He was asked about vaccine mandates for domestic travel, and he defined what mandates are and then said that he thinks that it would be good.
Getting people to have a mechanism that would spur them to get vaccinated. Namely, you can't get on a plane unless you're vaccinated, which is just another one of the ways of getting requirements, whatever that might be. So, I mean, anything that could get people more vaccinated would be welcome. But with
See, no, that would be welcome. That's saying something different than what you're claiming to say now. Fauci did continue and was pressed several more times by Acosta.
We didn't expect Omicron to clobber us like this.
Well, Jim, you just repeated the scenario that happened when I made the answer to that question. You always keep things open for consideration, and you monitor things on a daily and a weekly basis. And if sometimes you have to make changes to be commensurate with the situation, you do. Right now, I don't see this being announced or happening in the reasonable future.
Okay, and keep going that way. Keep going that I don't see the administration doing it. I don't see the administration adopting it is a form of political misdirection, to say the very least. But Acosta was not done.
And there is a conflict behind the scenes, is there, over that idea, is there?
When you say conflict, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is, it sounds as though you may be in favor of vaccine mandates on airliners, whereas maybe others in the administration are not.
No, let's clarify that, Jim. I said that it's something that's open for consideration. It's not a question of being in favor of it or not. I'm in favor of what we can do to keep the country safe.
Here's the thing. At times, I have not been as anti-Dr. Anthony Fauci as I think some other people have been. And it's because there are times when I hear the man give answers to questions that I think are just about science. There are other times, and it's been throughout the entirety of the pandemic, where a question or a conversation goes a certain way, and you wonder to yourself why it went that way, because this sounds like a hostile interview that a politician is giving to a news organization that wants some sort of information they don't want to give up. That's what this sounds like to me, and it makes no sense if you want to keep claiming that you are void of these sort of things, and even just the gotchas. The several times now, this one now included, where you can show a contradiction in a short amount of time from the good doctor, or whatever you want to call him, from Dr. Anthony Fauci, that makes you wonder how that's possible in the world of science, how that's possible in the world of medicine, because we certainly recognize it from the world of politics, and we do not seem to understand how it can be impacting him so significantly, and yet it is. Shifting gears, another conversation out there, certainly I think a fear as far as the conservatives go, as far as Republicans, and their attempts to block Build Back Better. More and more Democrats have been saying things about how Build Back Better might be something that gets forced through presidential executive privilege, executive orders. There are several things out there right now kind of referencing the same basic idea. And I will just say this. I can play some of the politicians. Maybe we'll do that a little later on in the show. I will just say this, that executive orders at times, and certainly I'm going to be as biased as everyone else, seem to be tremendously valuable. They seem to help break through gridlock and get some things done. Certainly when a politician gets into the office on the team you're on, some of the first few changes that are made that way are significant and have value. However, if we continue to, in the world of the president, go rogue and have every single piece of legislation that gets defeated, and even by your own party, by the way, when your own party blocks you from passing agenda pieces that you want to see done during your time in office, and you go executive action, executive order to get as much of that done as you can without the help of Congress, without the help of the Senate, we have a problem. To me, that's a more significant problem, and it's just like any of the other debates that are had, ending the filibuster versus liking the filibuster when your side is using it effectively. These become intriguing and challenging things to sort of navigate. I don't know personally that a lot of Build Back Better is capable of being forced down the throats of all the politicians who said no to it via executive action. And I know that if it is attempted, that it certainly will be challenged in courtrooms and whatnot. I imagine that these are things that would be litigated quite significantly. And yet it feels as though we're creating more and more opportunities to have those discussions about getting rid of some of these long-running, valuable parts of our government process because they're being abused. And there'd be no better example, just saying it one more time before taking a break, there'd be no better example of having your own party be the roadblock to your legislation getting passed and going around your own party to go ahead and get parts of it done anyway. That's as valuable as I've ever heard example of going ahead and being like, you know what, screw it. I want to be essentially king. And Biden doesn't strike me as a guy who'd do well if we king him. A quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Irreverent? Yeah. So what? It's the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be with you. Chad is back after the holidays. I think that this is an interesting continued conversation in the fact that it still exists at all, I guess is what I should say. Representative Jim Himes was asked about the January 6th investigation, the January 6th commission, all the things going on there. And remember, I'm just going to keep reminding people that there was an impeachment trial about this. And I think the first few words he speaks are maybe the most important because it's a question that I think everyone has been asking the entire time, and how it's possible that they still think they don't know the answer to this. I'm pretty sure the answer is the evidence doesn't exist. But anyway, take it away, Himes.
The really key thing here is, could you get facts that would show enough evidence to suggest a chargeable conspiracy?
Yes, that is the really key thing, and whether or not there are any facts that exist. And this far in, as it's investigation number 2 or 3 into this sort of thing, you wonder to yourself how they could still think they don't know the answer. And what this is, in my opinion, is Democrats not finding proof of the thing they need to be true or want to be true and just refusing it. Just saying, no, at some point we're going to find something that we can do that we can say is obviously a link between former President Trump, between other members of that administration, and the events that happened. And then I love this part of his statement, too.
Could there be information that leads to criminal activity? Because right now, speaking as a guy who was in the chamber on January 6th, it's pretty hard to see, the folks who got fired up by Donald Trump and his people go to jail, although they should go to jail.
That's it. I love the fact that he says it's tough to see these people go to jail, the people who actually committed the crime, the people who went crazy completely on their own to some extent, or at least that's certainly the belief of a lot of people. And that, you break the law, you do something stupid. You do something worse than stupid, because I know, a police officer lost his life, and I know some other things that happened that day. People would have a problem with just using the word stupid and not something stronger. At the same time, saying that it's sad to see these people go to jail, even though they deserve it, because the former president isn't going with them, is lunacy.
But to see the masterminds of all of this, pleading the fifth, ignoring subpoenas, and potentially walking away with no accountability.
I don't know how you decide that they're the masterminds. To be entirely honest, I don't know how much provoking a crowd is relevant, how those sort of conversations become a trial anywhere, how anyone is really proved to have incited a riot or incited the things that happened that certain day by the things they say. And I know at times there have been cases that have proven that is certainly possible. But my mind always goes back to the idea that I would still choose. If it were me in a moment and I was not there, by the way, I'm not admitting to being there on the 6th, but if I was there and I was, I heard all the same political things you hear all the time. And that's what happened also in the impeachment trial, the silly one, the one when Trump was already going to leave office and they tried to impeach him anyway, because, I don't know, they just were obsessed with that too. In the entire, development of all of those things, there was piece of audio after piece of audio demonstrating just how common a lot of the things that were said that day are in the world of politics, just how common those kind of ways of speaking are just politics in the society we're in right now, in our 2021, 2020 version of life. And none of those are the version of inciting a riot that you see in any sort of legal sense whatsoever have you. It's so interesting to think about that conversation and to watch it continue to kind of slowly, I think, sink in for Democrats. And many, I think, now understand that this investigation, this committee, is really just political posturing and an attempt to keep attention on something, to keep you hating a side of the political aisle and to keep you voting for those Democrats that hate Trump so much that this will feed right into that narrative and get you back to the ballots in 2022 and 2024. But other than that, it's just so broken in any sort of logical sense in how we get to this point where you just don't care about any of the things you've learned so far, any of the information that's come out. And essentially, you also put yourself into a very slippery slope type of situation, because if somehow, some way, something actually, which will not, but actually came from this investigation, and the words that day are actually highlighted as something that could incite a riot, so many other politicians are going to be in a lot of trouble from things they've said in the past or things moving forward. Maxine Waters is someone that should immediately make sure that she has legal representatives to protect her from any kind of backlash from some of the things she's done or said. I mean, the hypocrisy is crazily through the roof on all of this issue, and it's just so annoying, to say the very least. Real quick, I know that we're just about to take a break in just a second, but flu season apparently has resurged in the U.S., according to several studies. It makes you wonder why the flu wasn't a thing last year, and it sort of makes you, I'm not trying to be tinfoil hat guy, putting on the conspiracy theory lens, if maybe a lot of cases of COVID before this were actually the flu. I'm just curious. I'm not saying I know for sure. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back after the holidays. Some surprising news, certainly after the latest flub that was the vice president having any sort of spotlight shined on her. She apparently has higher approval ratings than the president, which is a first for this administration. Certainly not a good sign if you're looking at an approval rating of about 43% for the president of the United States and 44% for the vice president. That is not significantly different. But technically, Kamala is doing better now, officially, I guess. So that's where we are. Certainly, there's been more fallout from the conversation she had and the things that she said. Several of the takes out there saying that she's unfit to be considered one of the heir apparents in the political party, to say the very least. Larry Elder, one of those voices throwing that concern out there. I think this was on Fox News yesterday. He actually said two things. First, he talked about how she wound up in the position she's in and how it was a politically valuable move at the time to save the Democratic Party from Bernie Sanders. And then after that, we're going to touch on some of the things that are just fake narratives and fake kind of problems that she has decided to dedicate herself to that caused her just about 24 hours ago to say that what keeps her up at night is our democracy, which is just broken as an answer to a question gets for the vice president, as I said several times the other day. But here's Larry Elder.
Winsome Sears, the lieutenant governor-elect of Virginia, is a black female. You don't hear her complaining about her critics and calling them sexist and racist. She just deals with the criticism. Kamala Harris had one job, and she succeeded. And that job was to drag a mentally declining Joe Biden across the finish line. Because remember, Bernie Sanders had just won the Nevada caucuses, and for a few days, he was the clear frontrunner of the Democratic Party. They were scared to death.
Yeah, and actually, I remember former President Donald Trump saying that the Democratic Party robbed Bernie Sanders, and that seemed to be true. They did everything they could to work against him. Of course, Larry also touching on there some of the problems is as far as the claim, whenever it's made, that if you're criticizing Kamala, you have to be doing it because she's a woman or because she's black. You just cannot possibly be doing it because she's had terrible failed attempts to have interviews or conversations or lead on things like the border. No, none of that. You can't criticize someone. And by the way, that is treating someone equally and normally if you just react to the work they do and say that it's bad. That's just a thing that exists. It actually is providing that equality that people are asking for, not doing the opposite, not stripping it from anybody. But Larry went on to talk about some of the other issues that are discussed, like the voter ID issue, and how this narrative is so flawed on the Democratic side.
And regarding the Voting Rights Act, the whole premise is unsound. The Voting Rights Act is still in place. The John Lewis Act is going to federalize all these elections. I remember even Barack Obama once said the reason our elections are difficult to hack is because we have a 50-state election. That's why it's so difficult for these elections to be hacked. And the idea that voter ID is racist, guess who supports voter ID? Black people. Poll after poll after poll shows that. And in 2008, the percentage of black voters who were eligible to vote who voted exceeded the percentage of white voters who were eligible to vote for the very first time, despite the alleged voter suppression laws. So the whole premise is faulty.
You know who else supports IDs in order to vote? Americans. It doesn't even have to be broken down into any sort of groups. Americans support the idea, of having an ID to vote because we handle IDs in other walks of life very simplistically. So when the vice president goes on television and says that she is defending those who can't defend themselves with her position of power, and then throws out these illogical, emotional pleas that have nothing to do with the facts of the day, you just get further and further into this different world in which I guess we live now, in which this is the norm. By the way, the CDC's big announcement that said that the quarantine would change from 10 days to 5 days is something that Dr. Ashish Jha was talking about that I certainly played the other day. Dr. Ashish also talked about how this pandemic is becoming an endemic problem, one that you treat very differently with much less day-to-day, action of some kind, and just figuring out ways medically to treat those who get the illness, but not upending your daily life in any way, shape, or form. Since the CDC changed the other one, since they came across, I think, just a few hours after he gave that interview with their changes to the quarantine guidelines, I'm going to play this audio in the hopes that it continues to spur the conversation to start thinking of COVID-19 as endemic and not a pandemic, because that obviously, as I said, significantly impacts the amount of emergency-style responses our government would even have interest in trying to keep telling the American people have value.
Are you going as far as to say, Dr. Jha, that maybe this should be treated as endemic, somewhat like the flu?
Yeah, first of all, Trace, thanks for having me back. The way I think about this is we are shifting now in the pandemic from this acute phase where what we knew until Omicron was that cases invariably led to hospitalizations and that invariably led to deaths. That link between cases and deaths is starting to break. And I think that is a feature of an endemic virus. So I'm not saying it's endemic yet. We're obviously still in a bit of a crisis situation. I think the next month is going to be pretty tough for the country. But we are now, I think, transitioning to a different way to think about this virus and how we learn to live with it.
I hope so. I think that we should be transitioning to that different way to live with this virus, but I'm not as confident as the good doctor is there. In other news, just shifting gears to some things I saw out there that I found wildly entertaining, and I hope you do too. This one, I don't know why this got me. About 2 million people watched this video on TikTok, which means other people had interest in it, I guess. But a dad is sitting in a movie theater with his family, getting ready for a Christmas movie. They're actually going to see Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. Now, this is not a brand new movie. This is a movie that came out a few years ago. So they're trying to watch it, I guess, in one of those theaters that shows second run or third run or whatever run it would be movies. And the reason that the audio or the video went viral is the dad was taping the screen in which someone seemed to be navigating an Amazon Prime account. So apparently this movie theater didn't have the rights to the movie they were showing or didn't have a different copy of it, or something went wrong, I guess, technologically. So essentially it's the same as you or me in our basement watching something on an Amazon Prime and Netflix, whatever the account might be, just with better stuff. And I don't know why that to me feels wrong. It feels like you should at least have the experience with maybe a different version of the movie that might somehow be better. And that's probably naive. That's probably on me and not them. But that would impact my interest in being at that movie theater again. And then as a follow-up on this specific story, they actually couldn't watch the film because in my favorite part of the video, what pops up on the screen when they try to hit play is you've played this too many times on too many different accounts. You have no more access to this film, which means they've been using that Amazon Prime account for a lot of the movies at the movie theater. And that does say something, either about our technology getting good enough, and as I said, tempting us to just stay at home next time and not go to the movie theater at all because we have all the things we might need to have basically the same experience, or it says something about this one specific Regal theater and their inability to have the things prepared or have the things correctly the way that they're supposed to have them in order to show these films. But I just love it. I love the fact that they ended up having to refund everyone because of a Amazon Prime issue. That's got to be something to be saying that to the theater too. Whatever person they had to roll in there, whatever young kid that works at that movie theater that had to usher the crowd out and issue refunds to everybody. I'm sorry, guys. We hit our limit of times we can view this film, or maybe we're showing it in too many other theaters at the time. That's on us. That's our bad. Everybody can have a free popcorn and head out the doors, or maybe just pick another movie. Maybe as a group, if you're sitting in that theater together, you got the whole rest of the Amazon Prime account to go through. Maybe you just start deciding what to watch, similarly to how we do it with our families. That would be wildly entertaining to me. You also refund everybody, of course. I think you go that road. And there are some good things out there. By the way, one of the good things out there is not the new Matrix movie. I got to see it because I have HBO Max. That's a bad movie. I know that this is not necessarily a long conversation about movies. We'll take a break. We'll get back to actual news of the day in just a bit. But The Matrix is full on bad. I've never seen a remake of a set of films that actually uses as much footage of those old films in the new one as this one does. I won't ruin anything else for you, but I think it's tremendously stupid. Many of the things that they do, many of the plot lines, and then it's just, again, very strange to keep seeing the old movies. Like, you got no ideas. That's sort of like this Amazon Prime situation. You're like, we're out of other stuff to put into this movie, so let's just fill it out with a bunch of stuff that already existed and hope nobody notices. They definitely notice, at least in my opinion, they do. I think some reviews are positive about it, but others are quite negative. I'm in the negative camp. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
If you like talk radio like Chad Benson likes his meals, you've come to the perfect place for takeout.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. You might have already heard of this story, but it's certainly going to circulate more and more, I think, throughout the next few days. So a mother went to Twitter to post a snapshot of advice Alexa, the Amazon smart speaker, gave her daughter. And it's actually something you can do. If you own one of these devices, you can go into the app, you can click on activity, and you can see the question that was asked and the answer that was provided. So this is what the mom shared, and it's gone more and more viral over the last couple of days. I think it came out just a day or so ago on social media, that her daughter, who is 10, asked the device to tell me a challenge to do. The Amazon device then, I guess, searched the internet, which is something it does, and answered as follows. Here's something I found. I should have done the Alexa voice. I should have set this up. Although it's not funny. This is actually kind of awful. Here's something I found on the web. According to ourcommunitynow.com, the challenge is simple. plug in a phone charger about halfway into a wall outlet, then touch a penny to the exposed prongs. That's real. That's a real thing that an Amazon device told a 10-year-old girl to do as a challenge. When it asked for a challenge to do, Amazon has since said that they've fixed that issue. Obviously, just allowing a computer to search the internet to find what was once a viral trend. It was viral. People doing the outlet or the plug socket challenge was a real thing about a year ago on social media, demonstrating just how stupid social media is so often. But this is probably as good of an indication as any, and I know I've been talking about that a little bit, that these ways in which we rely on technology can so easily be bad. How horrific would that have been if mom wasn't around and the kid didn't know any better and actually tried the suggested challenge? That is scary, to say the least, in my opinion. Obviously, some people reacting to it on social media as well and saying, how could it even be possible? But that's where, when you have massive companies that have so many different things they're involved in, no matter how successful and big they get and how many checks and balances I think they add within their companies, this sort of stuff is more common or more likely to occur. And it reminds me of the story I was talking about yesterday of the TikTok person who's now suing TikTok, saying that they have PTSD from taking a job as a moderator. Now, I know a lot of people would say, and I didn't talk about the court case as much yesterday, that if you take a job doing something, it's on you if that job is something that isn't, I guess, what you expected it to be, or isn't what you want to be doing with your life. It's your choice to go ahead and apply for and work in those types of fields. But it is a uniquely damaging and also just completely the sign of our times sort of version of employment to have to monitor things off of the internet that are too graphic to be on the internet. That's a heck of a sentence and not a fun job by any stretch of the imagination. And, that's Facebook needing individuals at their companies, or TikTok in this case, to do work computers can't. And I guess the same holds true for the Amazon devices. And this also does remind me of how the Amazon outage a few weeks ago wound up turning everyone's smart devices off. And I have them, by the way. I kind of like several of the smart devices in my house and don't worry all the time about the amount of spying they're definitely doing. But when you can't have your refrigerator operate correctly because the cloud is out, you got to rethink the decision-making you're doing there. In other news, or I guess this is just news about news, which feels very meta suddenly, outlets have been hurt. This is a claim by AP News, by the public's dwindling interest in news across the board in 2021. To a large degree, people have a inevitable hangover of the things that you hear about every single day, the things that are talked about on all those platforms, and they are all down, I guess. Viewership, not necessarily viewership meaning that this station is doing better than this station, but just based on their previous success and their most current amount of audience members. CNN is down 38% year over year in total viewers. Fox News is down 34%. MSNBC down 25%. Again, that would make it sound like maybe Fox has lost more listeners than MSNBC. And while they probably have, they are viewers, they still have a massively larger audience. So MSNBC losing 25% of a much smaller amount of people is probably more significant. But even the apolitical, quote-unquote, news stations, the ABC World News Tonight, down 12%. CBS Evening News, 14%. Nightly News also down about 14%. I don't know. I'm not shocked by this. I will say, as a guy that does talk radio and news talk and some political news talk for a living, that I'm exhausted by it all the time. And you never know what the right amount to do of this stuff is, or just move on and talk about other things. Because it's certainly cathartic for me, and I imagine for a lot of these outlets, to just not talk about any of that news. And if we're seeing in the data that nobody has interest in it, that's wonderful. I feel like we get to a valuable place where I don't need to care about any of that stuff. And I can instead tell you about this study out of Oxford University that demonstrates the difference between men and women when it comes to how we love. I love this study so much, no pun intended. Apparently, the research found that men's brains work different than women's brains. Shocking. I know. That is amazing information. Well done, researchers. But men have to put a lot more effort into understanding romance. Apparently, an MRI machine was put on people's brains, men and women, and it found that the amount of parts of the brain and the amount of activity in the brain was more significant in men and more centered in logic portions of your brain because we had to comprehend the romance, where women were able to do it much more instinctively and much easier. And the researchers found, and they were criticized for this, by the way, a lot of people mad about it. The researchers found that this means that it's much more effort for men to both act romantically and understand romance. And a lot of people said that that's, sexist, even though it's just science, and that was profoundly patronizing. One person said, I think it's true. As a guy, I have no problem admitting that I think I struggle with romance far more than my wife, and where she's, doing something that seems like it's way, like so much action and just over the top in a good way. For me, if I have a gesture that goes back her direction, it never seems like it's quite enough. I feel like this is a fine way to say that men or women are indeed different, and I'm surprised that so many people are upset by this information, because I think we're just starting to pretend that things aren't true that we all know are. Any of the guys out there that are, railing against this study, I think are just kind of lying to the world, because we all have to be experiencing the same thing to some varied degree, I would assume. And if science and Oxford's a good place, can figure these kind of things out, how can't they be true? I don't know. I don't have the answers. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. You know how some politicians, mostly Democrats, oddly defend China? Like say things. I think there actually is some stuff out there right now, too, about some politicians saying, actually, and one producer for one of those television stations that absolutely leans to the left, saying that some of these alleged human rights issues that exist in China, which are not alleged, they're absolutely confirmed and real, are still debatable, which is crazy. But it's weird every time you hear it. When you hear the vice president say something to the effect of no one's to blame for COVID, and you wonder to yourself, what now? Like, can't we figure that out a little bit better? And don't we feel like maybe there's somebody that is? I see a story like this. Chinese state media is trolling the United States on all of its platforms for having much higher COVID numbers, much higher case numbers than they have in their country. This is something that they're legitimately celebrating and enjoying to talk about on state media in that country. Not that, again, I believe the numbers that China has put out pretty much throughout the entirety of the pandemic as it relates to their positive cases. But the fact that they would go so far as to celebrate the opposite happening here, and we have our politicians and people at times defending that country, it just makes no sense. I'm just going to be honest. Just when I see that and I think about it more, I just don't get it, how that wouldn't be it. Like if I just said that one sentence to any of these politicians, I wonder if that would snap them back to reality and be like, hey, you know that they're celebrating us having much higher admitted COVID numbers than them currently. That's a thing they do. Oh, maybe now you're willing to break bad against. I don't know. In other news, I like this. This is a revisit of audio from February of 2021 of this year that has gone viral. President Biden was speaking about how he projected Christmas to be a time when COVID was over. And obviously, you remember on the campaign trail, he promised ending coronavirus. Here's what our president said in February about this time of year.
By next Christmas, I think we'll be in a very different circumstance, God willing, than we are today. I think a year from now, when it's 22 below zero here, a year from now.
By the way, his jokes are bad. They get the laughter, and I don't think anyone's ever cried or died laughing at a Biden joke. They're not even legitimately good, like dad jokes. Some dad jokes are legitimately funny. Biden, like, it's going to be super cold.
No, a year from now.
No, it's not going to be negative 22. I'm hilarious. Anyway, back to COVID.
I think that there'll be significantly fewer people having to be socially distanced, have to wear masks.
Well, a lot of people agree with that, though, Mr. President, but not for the reasons that you would think that it existed. How can you just get take after take as incredibly incorrect as these things are? Biden did say just the other day that there is no federal solution to COVID. Again, the guy who promised to end it.
Look, there is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level.
And he did, some people are saying that that's an out-of-context version of that quote. He did talk about some of the things the federal government can do, but at the end of the day, there are going to be things that just land on the states. And honestly, that's not even something I'm upset about as far as a thought goes. I would like states to be in control much more than the federal government, just like our former president allowed for the states to make a lot of these decisions. That's good. It is significant, though, when you're someone who promised to end it if you were put in office, and to have it not go your way. Oh, and I also loved this audio from the other day, and this happens a lot. President Biden is having a conversation with the governors. He then says that the conversation is open to questions, and everybody but him pauses. It's kind of like the "Let's go, Brandon" call that he got when he didn't realize, I think, what the guy meant, what he had repeated, that he said the phrase back, and then he kept asking questions about, hey, where are you at in this country? You live in Oregon? He just kept blazing through. Same thing happens here. He wants to take the questions, have the conversation. All of his staff desperately wants the media to leave the room first.
With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff, and I understand you guys may have some questions.
You might have some questions. Yeah. Jeff, come on. Jeff, why isn't anybody talking? I'm waiting.
I think we're going to clear the press first.
I think, Mr. President, we don't want to have them hear these questions and your answers.
Just give us a minute, governors, just while we...
And get out. And they ended it right there. Just give us a minute, governors, while they kicked the live stream completely at that point, and then they pushed all the press out of the room. I just love that the president himself doesn't know this stuff or think about it or maybe care or maybe even be aware that the press is in the room. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure out which challenge is snaking him at this moment, which one is behind these issues. But they continue to occur as well. And certainly his mental capabilities have come to mind as a part of the challenge. But maybe he also doesn't care. Like maybe he's legitimately willing to have the press overhear the questions between the governors and himself and continues to be surprised every single time his administration overly controls his exposure. I mean, the same might be true about those lists they hand him when he's calling on people in the press room, whenever he does actually answer questions. The fact that it's that micromanaged and that he's supposed to be in charge should be scary. And I think it is scary for a lot of people. We also did have Biden talking about masks.
It's not enough. It's clearly not enough. If we'd known, we would have gone harder, quicker if we could have.
Excuse me. And that's also talking about tests, talking about doing more for tests. And I love that this quote keeps popping up, because I'll just keep reminding everybody that this is a guy that said in December of last year that we needed to ramp up the amount of tests that we had available in our country. So just time again, it feels like there's kind of a self-own that exists in this world. And I'm surprised every single time, and maybe I shouldn't be. I also do want to touch on this relatively quickly. Joe Rogan is canceling several of his shows. He's canceling these shows because he's not going to get a vaccine. The only reason this is significant to me is Joe Rogan is as high profile as it gets in the world of people that got COVID and people who have natural immunity. And I think it's valuable to keep talking about this, that Joe Rogan essentially has to cancel tour dates and stop performing certain places because he's going to refuse to follow the vaccine mandate rules that are in effect in other countries like in Canada. And certainly as we get further down the road, that is the Omicron variant and its uniqueness, both in evading vaccines and also not providing serious illness. It is the most prevalent type of variant of COVID in our country. It does make some of these rules silly, but I just love Joe's reaction to how he's going to have to cancel these shows.
I should probably say this because I haven't yet.
Yeah.
My 420 show that sold out in Vancouver, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't think I can even get into the country. Right. I'm not vaccinated. I'm not going to get vaccinated. I have antibodies. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think I can go. And even if I do go, I don't trust that Vancouver's not going to follow suit along with the way Toronto did it.
Yeah.
Where they cut capacity to 50%.
Yeah.
So he's not going to do it. He also obviously demonstrates there that cutting capacity is valuable for them, for people who are doing these shows, because it removes a lot of the money that comes with going and doing tours. And honestly, this all continues to remind me of a story I saw about Hong Kong. Hong Kong is one of the places in the world that's trying to have a zero COVID case number, and they're trying as hard as they can, and they're doing as many things in the world of restrictions, lockdowns, whatever it takes to get to a zero threshold. Because of that, they're losing businesses. Because of that, a lot of companies, a lot of, I would say valuable members of their society are deciding to leave, and they're deciding to go places where things are easier and more fair or more beneficial to the world of business, and not so short-sighted in trying to get to a goal that might not be achievable and might not be necessary for several reasons. It's just very interesting to see those kind of conversations, and then to think about the places in our country, places like New York, places like D.C., that are creating their own restrictions, and how that impacts the business communities, and how the business communities respond to that impact, and whether or not that actually is going to create a long-run negative, a long-term detriment to some of these places that seem to think that it doesn't matter. Whatever we do, whatever rules we put in place, people have to follow them. We will find this version of society where we get everyone to agree with us at all costs. And what is that actually going to cost those locations? I think that's a valuable question that is not asked anywhere near enough. All right, I got to take a break. The Craig Collins fill-in show on Chad Benson is the actual show. I'll be back in a bit.
Podcasts are American as hot dogs, apple pie, football, and sushi.
Oh, my goodness. No.
Okay, maybe not sushi. Next time you have a craving for something sweet and tangy, download a Chad Benson Show podcast.
Boy, that is good. It's different because you get a little bit of saltiness. It's so good because it's sweet and salty at the same time.
Get a taste on iTunes, iHeart, or Spotify and binge to your ears' content.
Oh, yeah.
You're listening to The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back after the much-deserved holiday vacation. I saw that the Powerball is now up to $441 million, and it's starting to get reported on in some news places. And that happens, I guess, whenever the Powerball grows kind of significant. But for me, it's not valuable yet. The Powerball reached an all-time lottery of $1.58 billion. By the way, got to correct myself. $400 million is significant to me as a human. That is not why I dismiss this as news, but it's because of how much bigger the Powerball has gotten in the past. I would want to be the guy who wins the $400 million for sure, but I guess I just would never want to go to a party with the guy who won $1.5 billion. That's the only thing. So I think as the prize keeps creeping up there, it was $700 million earlier this year. You'll hear more and more talk, more and more people will buy them, and more people have hope. The odds of winning the Powerball are tremendously bad. Not that is surprising to anyone out there. I think it's similar. I could give you the exact odds, but I think it's similar to getting struck by lightning like several times consecutively is how you get to this number, but 1 in 292 million. So if you feel like you're the lucky one who can hit the Powerball and win all that money, and then you have absolutely no idea what to do with it, go ahead and buy up the tickets. I just love when we start talking about it more because it gets higher. And the reason, by the way, and this was genius years ago, that the Powerball number has crept higher and higher over time is because they made the odds even worse. And I remember that sort of just because there is a point, when you say the odds are 1 in like 151 million or 252 million, it doesn't really mean much to the regular person. So they could probably lower the odds even more. They could make it 1 in 100 million, and I would probably still buy the same amount of tickets year over year because, there's always a chance, as I like to say. I like this story a lot. I think this appeared in a couple different outlets. I saw it on the New York Post. but a family devised a quote-unquote crafty way to spend the holiday with a COVID-positive family member. The sister and the daughter for this family had wound up COVID positive. She wasn't having a lot of symptoms, but, you're supposed to quarantine. So they put a bubble around her. Actually she was boy in a bubble for a few days, and she was put on social media. There's not a lot of audio reaction. A lot of video, though, is out there of her sitting at the table for the family meal while eating in a bubble. And I don't know how they got the food in. They didn't put that part of the video up there. I don't know if somebody gave her a latch of some kind. They let her get her food alone first, and then they locked her in a bubble. She also seems to be opening, and I say that with air quotes, some of her Christmas presents while stuck in a bubble, because that's not easy to do. But she got to spend the entire family celebration with them. And it does remind me, too, of a photo that I liked a lot, which was an odd time, I guess, early on during the pandemic. There was a dude who had like a face pod. It was just like a box that he put on his head to go on an airplane. And that thing seemed awesome. If it actually blocked out sound so you didn't have to talk to people, if you're not interested in having conversations with strangers every so often, and it wasn't just to protect you from anything in the air, I think more people would still be buying it, the COVID face bubble. And I don't know why they didn't go that road for this girl, by the way. They didn't need to bubble the entire body. They could have just stuck to the head area, but that's their call. That's not on me. I don't want to tell them how to live their lives and how to protect their family from a COVID daughter during the holidays. In other news, shifting gears, getting away from that, Nirvana lawyers have responded to this lawsuit that I've taken way too much interest in, of the Nirvana kid, Spencer Eldon, who's now 30. He was trying to sue this band. He's been trying to do it since about August of this year, because he says that they inappropriately profited off of him, and that at the time, since he was a little baby, and the photo is not wearing clothes, that it might have been things like child pornography or sex trafficking, which are insane claims. But the lawyer's latest response, which came in a little while ago, said that because this guy, Spencer Eldon, not only embraced the photos often on social media, but, quote, tried to pick up several women based on his... based on his celebrity status as the kid from the Nirvana album, he obviously had no problem with it. They actually put that in there, that he tried to find relationships and ladies that would want to be with him because he had that very small level of fame. And talk about that as being just an embarrassing argument in a courtroom to have read back to you. And then maybe even, and this would be amazing, and I feel like it should happen at some point if the defense gets a hold of text messages and stuff, just run through the things he said to those women. He's like, by the way, I'm the Nirvana baby. If he's texting anybody, if he's on any of the dating apps, he's like, I'm all grown up now. Be fun to hang out. Whatever he's doing, however that pickup line works, I'd love to see it. Probably some references to how a lot of him has grown over the years. Sorry, I got myself in that one, and I shouldn't have. And I imagine that would be a starting point to the negotiation to date somebody on the dating apps. And if those could be read in court, if they exist, my life will be better, which I think is what we're all kind of after, I hope. One last one, and then I got to take a break in just a bit. Elon Musk responded to a Chinese lookalike that went viral on social media. The guy's name is Yilong Musk. I think that might not be his actual name, but that's what the internet is calling him. But apparently Elon is thrilled about it. They look identical, him and Yilong, which is what people are calling him. And he hopes to meet his doppelganger someday. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you get a job. Maybe somehow you start working for the guy. And I don't know what it's like to be the other side of this. For the celebrity person, it's probably just funny. I don't know how it feels for the guy who's like, wait a minute, now even the famous person who people confuse me for feels like we look similar enough. You got to try to benefit from it at that point. You got to go Nirvana baby style and start trying to see, hey, I'm the Elon Musk doppelganger approved by Elon. You want to maybe go out sometime? That's probably on a dating app somewhere too. All right, I got to take a break. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. A lot more in a bit.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to have you with us this holiday season. Chad will be back after the holidays. Just very quickly, continued information about the Omicron variant of COVID, and then we're going to talk about some other stuff. Kinda. I guess we're going to talk about Dr. Fauci, too. But another UK scientist, a leading one, Sir John Bell. I like the fact that he gets the Sir in front of his name. That's something we don't have enough here. He's from Oxford University, says it's not the same disease. Omicron is not the same illness as COVID, previous versions of COVID are, because it's much more mild. That is the continued conversation from some of these kind of advanced, I guess, pieces of data that we're seeing and different conversations that some of the elite in the medical community are having. A whole lot of people are denying it, ignoring it, and telling you to just be quiet and shut your mouth. And we got to wait longer for more data to be available, which is, I guess, only slightly true. And more confirmation of this would be good. But it seems we have enough information to act on now, or I should reverse that, decide to stop acting on, and yet it doesn't seem to be the case. All right, Dr. Fauci. I want to keep talking about this because I find it so interesting that this is the latest flip-flop in the world of the Fauci. And it's more interesting when it happens when Democrats are in charge because, in my opinion, it seems more demonstrative of the idea that he is a political operative that leans a certain direction. Because there were times when he tried to shield, and I think our former president tried to shield any kind of behind-the-scenes conflict that they were having, but he was much more willing to contradict what he thought was quote-unquote science or, medical fact and not opinion from the past administration. It seems like he might have been slapped on the chin or wherever you want to say it, just scolded a bit and told to change his position. Because in a 24-hour period, Dr. Fauci has gone from someone who seemed to advocate for domestic vaccine mandates just as a way to get more people vaccinated, not because he thought they were scientifically necessary, to someone who says that he does not advocate for them, which is real confusing. Dr. Fauci. Let's let Jim Acosta try to grill him as Jim Acosta would. And again, not that I think even Acosta meant to sound like an actual journalist for a bit here. He just expected Dr. Fauci to say that mandates were appropriate because he had been saying it on that station and other ones pretty much in a bunch of interviews all day long yesterday.
And let's talk about vaccine mandates. You've been saying that vaccine mandates for domestic flights should be considered, should be seriously considered. Is that something that President Biden is seriously considering? Is it something that the administration is considering?
No, what I said, Jim, was that everything that comes up as a possibility, we put it on the table.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop it here. I'm not going to play the other audio because I want to stay on this piece. That's not what he said.
And we consider it. That does not mean that it is going to be likely to happen. Right now, I don't think people should expect that we're going to have a requirement in domestic flights for people to be vaccinated. When I was asked that question, I gave an honest answer. It's on the table and we consider it. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I doubt.
That's not at all what you said. All right, continue.
If we're going to see something like that in the reasonably foreseeable future.
Now, the reason I want to keep playing this audio is because that's it. We're done. But Acosta is going to keep asking the question because, again, I think this is a person who loves to have a very one-sided, very non-news version of a news program, although he's a pundit, too, so I guess he has every right to his opinion, no matter how annoying or ridiculous it is a lot of the time. But Acosta needs the quote. He needs the Fauci, doctor or, Saint Fauci, to say that domestic travel vaccine mandates make sense.
If things get worse, though, is that something that has to be kept on the table as an option?
You said, and by the way, even that question is just a mess because Fauci literally said on the table. So to repeat, doesn't it have to be kept on the table? Is you could just answer it with yes and then move on, and Acosta wouldn't be done. But that's a mess of a question.
We didn't expect Omicron to clobber us like this.
Well, Jim, you just repeated the scenario that happened when I made the answer to that question.
Yeah.
You always keep things open for consideration, and you monitor things on a daily and a weekly basis.
All right, I'm going to skip a lot of that because it's just the same thing over again. But Acosta is not done.
And there is a conflict behind the scenes. Is there over that idea? Is there?
Okay, wait. I want to play the last little part of this too because there's so much hope in the voice of an Acosta all of a sudden with the second is there. Like maybe I'm way over breaking this down now, but I hear it. I hear no, we're still not getting the right answer. We need the right answer. Let's go ahead and beg him for it, and then let's get a little bit hopeful with the. So does it mean you're fighting Biden? Have you come to blows yet?
And there is a conflict behind the scenes. Is there over that idea? Is there?
Is there? Please? Is there?
When you say conflict, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is it sounds as though you may be in favor of vaccine mandates on airliners, whereas maybe others in the administration are not.
Or to put it another way, you might have kicked Biden in the shin when he told you that you're not going to do the mandates. Did you kick him in the shin?
No, let's clarify that,
Darn it.
Jim. I said that it's something that's open for consideration. It's not a question of being.
All right, that's fine. We're done again because it's the same answer again. And yet I want to play the other audio too. And this, I'm probably just beating a COVID horse or whatever you want to call this now. I'm not relenting, much like Acosta, to the point. But this is full on political versions of conversations and interviews. And I know that a lot of people probably feel like we've been there. We've figured this out already. I don't know why this one sounds so much more significant to me. And maybe it's because even in the John Carl interview from the other day, he referenced his interest in mandates while also saying in that interview that they weren't scientifically necessary.
It's just another level of getting people to have a mechanism that would spur them to get vaccinated. Namely, you can't get on a plane unless you're vaccinated, which is just another one of the ways of getting requirements, whatever that might be. So, I mean, anything that could get people more vaccinated would be welcome.
Anything that could get people more vaccinated would be welcome.
So, I mean, anything that could get people more vaccinated would be welcome.
And now he's saying, I never advocated for the mandates. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's the last little bit, too, and then we're done with this. But I want to play it of him saying how it's not scientifically necessary to be vaccinated to be on a plane.
But with regard to the spread of virus in the country, I mean, I think if you look at wearing a mask and the filtration on planes, things are reasonably safe. We want to make sure people keep their masks on. I will
stop that there because I talked about that a lot yesterday, too. It's something else to see it happen in real time and again and just get denied. Like any other good politician who flip-flops on a topic, you go ahead with the other take and you pretend you never said the first thing. And we wonder why so many people say that Dr. Fauci is not someone that has this high standard of trust that so many seem to just think blindly he deserves to be given. It's something else to watch it one more time. And I imagine this is all actually, and this is my, I guess, hopeful opinion as we get closer and closer to the end of this year and the more and more data we find about the mildness of the Omicron variant of COVID compared to the other ones. I hope this is over. I hope we hear from Dr. Fauci no more in a couple months. I hope that none of the conversations that we've been having now feel relevant in just a short amount of time. And I know that testing right now is a big concern for a lot of Americans in a lot of parts of this country. And depending on where you live, if you can even get tested is certainly part of the equation. But I think a lot of that might also be coming from the fear of the past conversations we've been having here and much less reacting to the reality of the latest variant. And I know that that's still something. And I'm not trying to be anti-vaccine. I'm not trying to be anti any of that stuff. I've gotten the vaccines. I follow the mandates and the protocols when they're enforced on me, even if I complain about them and hate them. But it just feels like the way we're going is that this might be the end of all this. And maybe Fauci's career will also take a significant hit, much like those of our president and vice president. All right, one other quick topic, then we'll take that break. Kanye West recently purchased a home across the street from Kim Kardashian. This is a person who divorced him. He said it's to have the kids over as much as possible. I guess in the vein of thinking about it from a father's perspective, sure, it would make sense. It would be good to live that close to your children. but also tremendously creepy, tremendously odd to move that close to an ex, to live, within such a small proximity, such an ability to know what's going on in her life. Like any of your neighbors can kind of see what's going on or who might be in your life. And that just, it feels insane. It feels like this shouldn't be something that should be how you operate, how you live your life, that Kanye should be aware that it's a bad idea. And as I say that, I am reminded of the fact that he ran for president and several of the other things. He calls himself a genius still on a constant basis. South Park has a great episode making fun of Kanye where they turn him into a fish. That's all I'm going to say about it, because some of the other stuff I'm not allowed to say. But I would highly recommend you watch that, because it's a lot about his arrogance in some ways. But this is a whole new level of creepiness, in my opinion. And I don't know if Kim's happy about this. Maybe she doesn't live in that house all that often. Maybe she spends a lot of her time away, and maybe that'll be good. Although it also might create like some crying Kanye memes if he takes any photos of himself alone in his mansion, waiting for his ex to take him back. Because he keeps talking about it, too. It would be one thing if you were totally fine with the fact that your relationship was over and then you move in across the street. It would be insane still, but at least it would feel a little different. He's still like singing songs, performing on stage, and saying a bunch of stuff about him wanting Kim to take him back. And now he lives next door. So, yeah, if I'm Kim Kardashian, maybe move would be in my near future. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
You stink like fear and white male privilege to me.
I do often out myself verbally as a gender. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm proud to be a gender.
Are you stupid? What? Are you kidding me?
Not a great way to use your white privilege.
Some people get it, some people don't.
You're listening to the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show, and I know this is happening a lot, so I guess I shouldn't I shouldn't be reacting as much to this video as I am, but there's a viral video out there of a little kid at a restaurant in New York City, and a significant amount of New York City police. And I am a pro-police person. I want to say that going into this conversation, too. I think that a lot of police have a very tough job to do, and especially in I think enforcing these kind of mandates. It's probably not a position several officers want to be in, but this is weird. This looks odd. This is strange that it's our country. It's uncomfortable to watch it happen. The kid seems legitimately, emotionally, almost immediately impacted by the fact that a bunch of cops are throwing him and only him out of a restaurant with his family because he doesn't have a vaccine passport. By the way, probably can't get one. I can't tell the exact age of the child, but he's probably too young to get a vaccine, which makes this even more significant that he's going to get thrown out and can't live his life because he's got no options in this world. And as I said, I know that this isn't, entirely shocking or new. I just haven't seen a video of it before. So we're just going to play a little bit of it. It's mostly commotion. And then you hear one sentence before I'm going to stop it, before it gets angrier than that, from mom saying how disgusting it is. But it's just weird to hear the police presence.
You just basically saying that you can't serve, otherwise if you're not going to pay for it, you have the card. I know, but you don't have it, then you're going to have to leave.
Okay, so when he's saying if you don't have a card, you got to leave, the kid actually immediately pops up and stands in front of all the police, and as I said, there's multiple police there, and covers his eyes and looks like he's starting to cry immediately. And actually, you know what? This is odd moment. I'm going to go ahead and take a second away from this audio and tell you a story about me as a kid interacting with police because I think it's valuable. And I remember this story differently every time I tell it. Maybe the police officer wasn't involved, according to my mother, but I think they were, and I think it was a learning lesson. I tried to steal fruit stripe gum, as a little kid, and I didn't know I was stealing it. I think I just scooped it up, and I was very little, like 3 or 4, and I tried to take it with me out of the grocery store. And my mother wound up making me apologize to the grocery store and return it. And sometimes when I remember this story, there was an officer involved who made some jokes about me having to straighten up. And all of it was fine, although I remember being scared as a little kid too, like feeling like, could I go to jail? Could I go to prison? Because you don't really understand all that stuff when you're a child, whether it's the worker at the grocery store, or in my case, and I don't know why I remember it differently, but I was very young, might have been a police officer. So this, if it's serious, if it's not a joke and not, eventually a lighthearted version, which it's not, they escort the kid out. I think this could absolutely be significantly sort of mentally damaging in a lot of ways, but let's hear a little more.
And if not, had a minute. You're not going to stay here.
So I know it's very muted too. You might have heard the police officer say you've had a minute. I think the kid might have tried to mumble, I need a minute, because that's what mom keeps saying. But mom keeps saying it and tugging her child back to the table.
You came in with a jacket?
He came in with the jacket, yes.
Wow. Scaring a child. Traumatizing a child.
Traumatizing a child is the reaction there. And yeah, I agree with this. You got several police officers. You got the little boy at times trying to make his way with the police officers toward the door of the restaurant to leave. And you have his mom kind of grabbing him and trying to stop him because, logic should prevail in this situation and not the insanity that is this moment to watch a young boy get escorted out of a restaurant for not having a vaccine card in New York. Are they proud of this? Are politicians that create policies like this proud? Because I wonder if they are. And I wonder if you maybe get them to see enough videos like this. And even the cop, I imagine if you interview that cop after, and I'm sure some publication, some news outlet, especially there in that city, will do their best to chat with him as soon as possible, is going to say they don't want to do it. I'm sure that their response is, I'm stuck. I have a set of rules I'm being asked to enforce, and it does not feel great to throw a kid out of a restaurant, or I guess walk a kid out of a restaurant for trying to be a human and be with his family. And I never thought I'd see that kind of stuff in our country, And I know that a lot of people will get immediately on their sides of the political aisle when you go the old, our country deserves certain freedoms, and that's what makes America so great. But it's true. It doesn't matter if it's also in some ways something that people might scream and yell in political arguments and fights. It's just the expectation. It's just what makes our country so special to continue to use those cliched versions of speaking. And this is not that country. This is not that type of expectation we have for our life here, and it shouldn't be. And I feel like, and I know this won't happen, and I know that this is common enough that, it's certainly not going to be as jarring to the politicians who created it. But if anybody watched the video of the little kid getting thrown out of a restaurant, they change the rules. They immediately respond, like within hours, within minutes, and be like, we're getting this wrong. This kid's not a criminal. He's not doing anything wrong, and he deserves to have a meal with his family and not be treated like a public enemy who needs 6 or 7 cops responding to the scene of being inside a restaurant at, whatever age he might be. But yeah, need to change that quickly, and I imagine we won't. Got to get out. Craig Collins filling in and Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. So much to talk about. Let's hear from de Blasio. Let's hear from Mayor de Blasio on whether or not the vaccine mandate penalties, the private sector enforcement, all those things are going to be done by, any one specific organization, or is it going to be a collection of people that are going to be asked to take away the freedoms of businesses and people that live right there in New York City?
On the enforcement element of this, what agency exactly is responsible for making sure all of these businesses are complying? And are there random spot checks? Is that what employers should be prepared for? Should inspectors show up at small businesses and say, show me your paperwork, et cetera?
Yeah, I'll turn to Dr. Choksi because obviously Department of Health plays a particularly crucial role, but a lot of sister agencies have gotten involved in this effort, as we've done previously during COVID. Yes, of course, businesses should expect inspections as per usual for so many reasons. But again, with an attitude of let's make sure things are working for everyone's health and safety. We're not trying to do gotcha. We're trying to just make sure we keep moving forward.
We're trying to do health and safety. We're not trying to do gotcha. You know what's really odd, and you've heard this objection before, but it continues to somehow be lost on people like de Blasio. Doesn't your livelihood connect to your health and safety? Doesn't your ability to have money to pay for the things that are that health and that safety, doesn't that have just as much of an impact as anything else could have? So if you're, showing up at these businesses and making sure that everybody is compliant, and if not, forcing businesses to fire some of the people that work there, aren't you also impacting their health, their safety, especially at a time when more and more what we're learning, and it feels like they've just gone so far they can't go back, to be honest. It seems like a lot of politicians might start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever you might want to call it, the version of conversation that exists that says that vaccines don't prevent transmission, don't prevent infection. They just prevent serious illness, so we can promote them, but we don't have to shut down our society. But they've already done it. They've already taken all those extreme steps that we never thought we'd see. And so maybe because of that, the only response now is to just keep blazing that trail in the completely wrong direction. But I just love that quote and the idea that he's like, we're not doing gotcha. We're not doing any of that. We're just shutting down businesses and getting people that lose their jobs. That's what. But it's not gotcha. We're not going to call it that. Let's call it love, because that makes way more sense to some. Just real quick note here. I just saw this a little while ago from news earlier today. Alex Jones's wife, Alex Jones, the broadcaster, conspiracy theorist, whatever you want to call him, his wife got arrested for beating him over Christmas Eve. I guess she beat him over 20 times, according to some police documents out there. And she was charged with misdemeanor assault and resisting arrest charges. She was reportedly released over the weekend on a $6,000 bond. That's all the information we have there. I'm not going to do any more on a topic like that because domestic abuse is not really a topic for any sort of fun. And I'm sure some people will react online because of the person involved. But that is something out there in the world of the news. I also saw this and thought it was pretty interesting. This is via Bloomberg, and actually got shared at MSN as well, and I couldn't help but read it. This might even be clickbait in a sense, but it says that at least 20 different guaranteed income pilot programs have been launched in cities and counties across the United States since 2018. More than 5,400 families and individuals have started receiving between $300 and $1,000 a month, according to a Bloomberg City Lab analysis. If all of these programs complete their pilot programs as planned, they'll have given out at least $35 million to 5,400 families. That's how significant, I guess, financially, this sort of thing is. And this article continues to make arguments about the value of a standard basic income in our society at some point in the future. And it's such an odd version of a conversation because all of the negatives, all of the things that could be potential byproducts of this way of thinking, I feel like have played out during this pandemic. We have seen when government spending goes crazy, how inflation and all these things make even increases in wages insignificant. So if the government spends money, if our economy gets hampered more by things like this, millions and millions of dollars giving everyone a basic universal income, what would stop the society we all live in from continuing to have rising and difficult inflation? And I'm not saying that there's any sort of plan for this to be a larger scale thing, at least for now. But when you have these examples and kind of small little studies seem to give you valuable information, it begs the question. And no matter what amount of money you give to people that would qualify for basic income, if inflation makes it impossible for them to live off of that amount of money, then all we're doing is a vicious cycle of spending money that doesn't actually fix issues. And that is the reason, in my opinion at least, that at least one Democrat, maybe two, have fought the Build Back Better plan and all the other spending. I know that some of the military spending has now been brought up since that was kind of greenlit through the House and through the Senate more easily. But some of those things you do have to spend on a little bit differently. You can't just abandon all of that. It's the more pipe dream things. It's the things that you stuff into legislation that has nothing to do. Remember, by the way, they initially called this more infrastructure stuff before it became more Build Back Better, not really infrastructure stuff, because Democrats have been trying to find the right way to pitch this to you, the American people, so that it becomes hard for them to fail. It becomes a thing where just too many of the people, even in places like West Virginia, I guess, that many Democrats didn't expect to be more reasonable for whatever reason. I don't know what that would be. But it's just so interesting to me as we talk about all these sort of things and we see this government spending run amok that we also have stories like this out there in the world. And you don't solve a problem by creating a new one. That's just essentially the argument that I would make and lots of people make, and the reason to prevent spending from going even crazier. But that's out there. That's out there in the, I guess, not large news, but kind of news ether. And we'll see how much more traction it gets in the near future. And then there's this story, which is totally shifting gears and something I found probably oddly funny. I'm going to be honest that I'm probably wrong in thinking this is humorous, but I can't get over the idea of it. So a Egyptian pharaoh that was mummified in 1525 BC was recently digitally unwrapped. This is a real story. I found this in BBC.com. They used a CT scan to show what he looks like now. And the only reason I found this at all amusing, outside of the tremendous waste of time that I think that this is that mummy, that human being who used to be a human, now he's a mummy, has got to be so upset. He never saw that coming in 1525 BC when he got wrapped up and mummified. He never thought people would be looking at him again. I think that's the whole reason to do it the way you did, to not be seen all these years later. But talk about what a long, slow play to ruin the whole point of what he did in the first place, as now there's photos of him out there in a I think version of himself he never wanted to exist, and he wanted to hide from the world. I don't know why I find that so amusing. There's something really dark and weird, and I'm just admitting it about thinking about the disappointment that Ahemtep the First feels right now, looking up from heaven or wherever. I don't know anything about the person, and seeing this play out, because he's got to just be like, not me, man. Leave me alone. It's been how many years? Okay, I'm going to stop trying to make that into a joke that everybody finds funny. I'm going to take a break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
I usually don't get into politics. As an ordinary suburban housewife, I feel a little disrespected. I teach my children not to name call.
You are a blabbermouth!
Come on, man. Guys, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum?
Chad Benson.
Just a loudmouth.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to have you with us. Chad is back after the holidays. Biden said this back in February of this year, talking about the season we're in right now.
By next Christmas, I think we'll be in a very different circumstance, God willing, than we are today. I think a year from now, when it's 22 below zero here, a year from now, I think that there'll be significantly fewer people having to be socially distanced, have to wear masks.
Nope. That'd be a no. According to your people, according to Democrats, that would be a hard no. Even if a lot of people on the other side of the aisle would like to see that certainly happen to the degree. And I know that some of those things that he's mentioning are probably not as prevalent throughout as much of the country as they were back in February of this year. But we're kicking kids out of restaurants in New York, and I can't get over some of those things. We're not at a place that seems different, even though more and more the conversation should be shifting away, that it's not about the actual seriousness of the latest variant of COVID-19. We also have this CNN doctor saying that cloth masks are completely inappropriate for the pandemic. That's great. That's good news.
Cloth masks are not appropriate for this pandemic. It's not appropriate for Omicron. It was not appropriate for Delta, Alpha, or any of the previous variants either, because we're dealing with something that's
aerosoled, which is something that, you know what's funny about that? Ron DeSantis said that a while ago, a long while ago. Ron DeSantis said it, and he said it in a different context. He said it in the sense of it doesn't make sense to have these mask mandates when masks don't really work well against an aerosol version of a virus, something that is contagious the way in which Delta was and the way in which certainly Omicron and even the original COVID variant seemed to be, whether that's beta or alpha. I don't know which one you call the OG variant. But so hearing this now, all this time later from CNN and their medical experts must make people like Ron DeSantis so upset, but also probably very happy because he got vilified. He got ridiculed for having that take a while ago when it was accurate. And the amount of people who will buy, KN95 or N95, whatever version it is, masks, and then wear them appropriately all the time. Because that is the other thing. If you're just trying to have the mask conversation as medically, accepting as possible, as assuming that some of the things that some of these doctors and scientists, the experts in the field, epidemiologists would say is the only way to protect yourself. When you're talking about those things, I guess what you're assuming is absolutely appropriate medical versions of use of this. And we all remember that early on during the pandemic when so many of our healthcare workers who are still, it seems, getting hit very hard with the amount of expectation on them to handle the world we live in from a medical standpoint. But wearing those masks and goggles and everything all day long, and coming home with just marks all over their face. Regular people aren't going to do that. We're not going to wear things like that for that long without taking them off for any reason whatsoever. It's just not going to occur. And so if you're not going to use things to this ridiculously extreme standard, and if you're going to start giving out more and more information about what types of masks are even appropriate, more and more, I think we fall in line with the conversation being, what is the point? And you don't mean that in the sense of even making the argument that others have made that, you're not afraid of COVID or whatever the other reasons would be that people don't want to wear masks. Like, legitimately, respecting all the medicine, is it something that people are even remotely capable of doing? And I think the answer is no. And certainly kids. That's the other conversation I'd love to have with anybody that's, mask, wear a mask all the time, every second, every day, and talks about it in school with children, is like, have they met a kid? Do they know how children behave? Because there's only two things that you're going to do in that world that'll make a kid either, live their regular, normal kid life where the mask will come off at some point, or have the mask never come off, the few and far between children, and that's scaring the absolute crap out of them. That's convincing them of a dramatic set of outcomes if they remove the thing on their face they don't want on their face. It's just illogical. And it just continues to kind of defy any of those thoughts that most of us as just people should have, because it makes no sense. Anyway, let's move on. I'm talking about that a lot today. Here are 7 New Year's resolution ideas and how to crush them. I love how these topics all come out around this time of year because a lot of the tips for how to actually succeed essentially revolve around don't give up or make your goals small in nature. But let's try this one out. This is a self-help guide, I guess, in a way, and we'll see how it works. First one, weight loss and improving your health. It's no secret that a lot of people have this as a resolution. It's the number one on this list. And to achieve these sort of things, look what it says. Consistency and making small changes over time are key. Being dedicated to this kind of thing. If you're shooting to lose weight and decide to go vegetarian to help yourself get there, not possible for me. You should actually do that incrementally as opposed to a drastic change where your delicious meat products are essentially gone. For my diet, not possible. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that's not a decision I can make. Number 2, bettering your finances. While you're trying to get out of debt or maybe, squirrel some more money away for a future time of need, which certainly the last couple of years has proved that those occur a lot. You have to do it, guess what? Slowly. You gotta make incremental changes to your spending in order to get yourself there. And actually, it also says, this is common, you have to focus on high interest rate debt first to get yourself out of debt entirely. Don't pay off the low interest, loan when you have the high interest credit card. Amazing advice. Getting organized is something that it says is on this list. A lot of people try to do. And to become organized, you need to create habits. It's the same advice that they encourage consistency, discipline, all the things you need to go from, cleaning everything up for a day to making it a lifestyle change. My wife wishes that one could be a thing that would change for me sometime soon. And maybe I just tell her I'm following the advice. I'm doing it very slowly. I'm making almost completely not noticeable changes in my organization and cleaning skills on a daily basis. You're not going to see it for a while, but over time it's going to get there. Quitting something like drinking or smoking, if that's something you want to do, the steps include, again, making them small and making them... Honestly, the whole list, I'll just throw it out. The other ones out there are to maximize your productivity and maximize minimize any sort of waste, any sort of things like you're throwing out, not eating, that kind of stuff. All of it the same thing. Think about a New Year's goal as a year-round goal and not a first month of the year goal, and you're more likely to succeed. I could have done that in one sentence. All right, Craig Collins filling in. A lot more Chad Benson Show in a bit.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here. Chad is back after the holidays. Just quickly, let's touch on some things that are in the news and valuable, and then I'm going to talk about some sillier things since it is a holiday week, which for me seems to mean the rules are lessened. First, though, I do like this audio from Larry Elder. He is reacting to Kamala Harris and some of the things that she said in the last few days, and just the way in which she continues to wilt when given any kind of platform whatsoever or being put in charge of anything valuable. First, though, is the attack back. And Larry, by the way, anyone that's curious, is a black guy. I don't know if that matters for this, but I guess it might to some, is saying that using the race card or the sexism card as ways to say that she's unfairly covered for our vice president is just crap. It's just the kind of thing that you do when you know that a lot of the criticism feels accurate and you just want to scapegoat all of it. Because that's the other thing about our vice president and our president. The criticism is so vast. There's so many mistakes. There's so many things to say you're not doing this well or that well. And it's not just her. Biden is taking as many, if not more, of these shots on a daily basis as far as the pointing out of his mistakes goes. But a lot of people in some circles say anything we say negative about the vice president is because of, something that has nothing to do with her job performance.
Winsome Sears, the lieutenant governor-elect of Virginia, is a black female. You don't hear her complaining about her critics and calling them sexist and racist. She just deals with the criticism. Kamala Harris had one job, and she succeeded. And that job was to drag a mentally declining Joe Biden across the finish line. Because remember, Bernie Sanders had just won the Nevada caucuses, and for a few days, he was the clear frontrunner of the Democratic Party. They were scared to death.
They were scared to death. That is accurate to remember and to think about how even former President Trump said that Bernie got hosed in that whole situation. But it's just as interesting to me to touch on some of those issues, touch on other politicians. If you're living a world or living a life, in the world of politics, criticism is a part of it. It's just always going to be a part of it. And trying to find a way to be immune to criticism, I guess, is a powerful political position to take. But it's also incredibly inaccurate as to any sort of, a description of ability or chance or any way in which you could function in a role like that. You're going to have people who disagree with the decisions you make, especially when you make so many bad ones. He did continue, though.
And regarding the Voting Rights Act, the whole premise is unsound. The Voting Rights Act is still in place. The John Lewis Act is going to federalize all these elections. I remember even Barack Obama once said the reason our elections are difficult to hack is because we have a 50-state election. That's why it's so difficult for these elections to be hacked. And the idea that voter ID is racist, guess who supports voter ID? Black people. Poll after poll after poll shows that. And in 2008, the percentage of black voters who were eligible to vote who voted exceeded the percentage of white voters who were eligible to vote for the very first time, despite the alleged voter suppression laws. So the whole premise is faulty.
That's an interesting take, sir. That's an interesting set of thoughts. They seem so different from anything that Democrats are saying, and yet it's true. If you actually dive into the numbers on the amount of people who support the idea of ID requirements in order to vote in our country, lots and lots of people, not just people in any one specific community or ethnicity, but everybody. Americans support it kind of universally and across the board. Beyond that, too, and I'll just touch on this quickly and we'll move on. I know that there's that story out of Georgia talking about how 4 dead people voted in our past presidential election. And now that was significantly lower than any number that Trump or other Republicans had said could have possibly voted. I'll continue to react to that by saying it's terrible that 4 people voted that weren't alive. And if we do more to prevent those kind of things, that's good for our voting rights and the way in which the integrity of our elections is upheld. And it's not trying to silence any voice except maybe the ones who aren't alive. Moving on, other things I saw. I like this a lot. This is trending right now on Reddit. People are putting up the things they want to do or the things that they have done in their life. A lot of people getting introspective at this time of the year. People saying these are things to put on a bucket list to do before you die. One of the biggest ones is seeing the Northern Lights. People say that it's absolutely beautiful if you go out to, say, some other parts of the world where it's much clearer and nicer to see the Northern Lights and laying, maybe camping for a night or two and seeing them laying under the stars. Seeing a planet is one that got mentioned here. A couple people that work in different astronomy departments said that they got to use the super fancy telescopes and see things with their own eye that maybe a lot of us don't get to see or we see online just differently, and that's a thrill they'll keep. Similar to that vein, too, seeing the Milky Way, seeing the entirety of our solar system is something that made a lot of people, feel like, hey, I'm just a small part of this life we're all living. I don't know. Like that one to me, even more than the other 2 before it, it would be, I assume, beautiful, but also tremendously valuable in making us realize, how important we are in the grand scheme of things. Seeing the Grand Canyon is one that I can say I checked off my bucket list and I absolutely loved. Other people say the first time they saw it, it was frightening and beautiful. One person said it's an attraction that cannot be overrated. No matter how much people might hype it, it's still going to live up to the hype. And I'll agree with that. And then finally, someone else said that I absolutely agree that photos versus the experience are just utterly different. It's not the same to see a photo. If we're getting a little bit more simplistic about some of the things that people said they want to do or haven't done or maybe have done once and really loved to add to the bucket list, hiking to the top of a mountain to see a sunrise. So I guess you'd be hiking when it's still dark out and getting to the top just in time for the sun to come up. I've never done that. That sounds awesome. Some people name drop very fancy mountains like Mount Fuji that they did this at. I don't think you have to do that. I feel like it could be similar, maybe not the same, but a similar experience if you don't want to go the full ridiculous, difficult hike situation. Watching an ocean on a silent beach is one that got mentioned a lot on here on social media. And people who don't live near the ocean obviously seem to be very jealous or confused by those who do. But there is nothing, in my opinion, more calming than that. And I imagine a whole lot of people listening have done it. If you wind up staying on the beach a little long, maybe, other people got removed or somehow you found a spot, or it's just one of those beaches you're allowed to be on at all hours of the night. Not saying that I've ever been removed from a beach by a cop, but it might be a thing that's happened. It is just incredibly calming. It's the peace of being the only person on a stretch of sand where you can look both ways and see nobody and just hear the waves crash. If you haven't done that, do it. Everybody, that's easy. This other one I love a lot. Now, granted, everybody was asked on social media to give their bucket list items, and people went as rogue as they wanted to. But some people said you got to live alone at some point in your life. You just have to experience it. The joys of not having anyone else to worry about, to clean up for, or to get yelled at for not cleaning up enough things. I did live alone for a while in college. I was an RA, so I had a dorm to myself, if that counts. And that was kind of nice. I don't think it's quite the same thing they're talking about here, having a full house to yourself and, living that version of life that is kind of tied to no one else's demands. But this is something that surprisingly a large amount of people said. And then they actually even piggybacked on it, doing things like going to a movie alone, going out to eat alone, having a solo vacation is mentioned here as experiences you need to have at least once in life. And same rules apply. Same sort of idea. You get the freedom to do whatever you want, and you're the only one voting. And that's kind of wonderful in and of itself. Getting a hug from someone waiting to see you all day. I guess if we're getting very, very small in the life things that matter or the things that are great experiences, hopefully this is on almost no one's bucket list. Hopefully people have experienced this. But one of these simple joys of life, according to several people on this post too, said it was that. Said it was someone who hugs you real, real tight. Maybe someone who's not even all day, but maybe someone who went, away for a bit. Maybe someone who traveled and then comes back home. Those are wonderful moments too. I like that. The final one, probably the most debatable, and then we will take a break. Bucket list item you need to experience in life, and you need to experience this one to appreciate it, is what people on social media are saying. It's not because you're going to love this time of your life, but work in customer service or retail. That's the last one that a whole lot of people said needs to be an experience you have, because it might open the eyes of some as to the challenges that exist in that job. And I have worked in both of those capacities. I've been a waiter. I've been other kinds of customer service. I've been in a phone, a call center. And I'll tell you, that you definitely have your eyes opened to what it's like to be the person on the other end that you're communicating with or asking questions to, or maybe getting mad about something going on in front of at a store. If you've worked those things, I'm not sure that this has to be a bucket list item, but it was an interesting one for them to include just in time for the holidays. And maybe you get all this done in a year. Maybe you make 2022 insane and you do every single one of these things. And then, I don't know, then I guess you're good for whatever comes after that. A quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Hashtag me too. Hashtag immigration reforms. Hashtag help. I'm trapped in a hashtag factory and I can't get out. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back after the holidays. Just quickly, something I should probably touch on. Travel nightmare continues. Another 2,500 flights got canceled today. Flights are being canceled left and right for all kinds of reasons. They're saying that this is mostly due to staffing issues because of COVID, although maybe some of those staffing issues are also people that are not going to get vaccinated. I don't know, because this has been an ongoing issue for the airlines. The airlines who saw a tremendous uptick in the amount of travel during this holiday season compared to what we saw last year. Still about 75% or so of what we saw pre-coronavirus levels, but certainly something that continues to be a huge story. 6,000 flights were canceled on Christmas Eve, and it just keeps... I've actually been through this, not for COVID reasons, but I once flew somewhere, and then a whole bunch of flights for the airline we were supposed to travel back on got canceled essentially for days. Like, I got stuck in San Antonio, Texas, which is where I had flown for the Final Four. That's a longer story than I'm going to explain here. But the airline kept canceling our flights, and it took me like a week to get home. They put us up in hotels, all that stuff, wasn't necessarily the worst experience. And San Antonio was fun as far as a place to be for that amount of days unexpectedly. But the amount of stress involved with not knowing when and if you're getting on a flight and going, especially for people, if these are return flights home that are getting canceled now with the holidays, a lot of people go back to work this week. So a lot of people might have been expected in offices and not there. So this is just probably something that's very, very tough to deal with. And I don't know. I don't know what a good solution is other than maybe making sure that none of this is being controlled by any sort of mandates or any kind of loss of people in a workplace because you have people healthy and ready to work that you're not letting. In other news, okay, this is not news. I find this, I really like this story too. And this is the second time I think in the show today where I'm going to expose a bit of odd humor that I have, and you might all not go with me, and that's fine. There is a long op-ed in Mel magazine trying to out a guy who's famous on YouTube for being the colon cleanse guru. His name is Christopher Walker. Apparently, they're outing the science of the colon cleanse, saying how it's not valuable. But the amount of jokes in this article are through the roof. Even the headline, which I cannot read to you because it's radio, it says, "Is YouTube colon cleanse guru full of a thing?" And then it continues to talk about how, and I'll just, I guess, use the word crap, how, the science behind colon cleansing your body might not be good. It might all be crap. And beyond that, apparently this guy, who's famous on social media for being a huge influencer in this community, I am a small child who laughs at silly things, but apparently his product is like more successful than most in creating the thing you expect it to do. A lot of people who reviewed it on social media said that the amount that they went after trying his product was way more than seemed humanly possible. And in doing this, in dealing with all this one person who I guess eventually tried it, the person who wrote this article, because the ads were following them around on social media, which definitely happens, said that it doesn't have any benefit at all, and they regret doing it. And they want to make sure that we know that the Mayo Clinic and others have looked into it and said there doesn't seem to be any health value to colon cleansing. You know, one odd thing this connects for me, and I'm going to lose a majority of the audience, even though I might have already lost a bunch, but some people are still hanging around. If you've ever gotten a colonoscopy, you do know about the process involved that I think would be similar to what you'd call a colon cleanse, and you never want to do it willingly. That's never a thing you want to go back and doing. The prep material for the few and far between that know what I'm speaking of right now is one of the worst experiences of your life. It's just, it's a time that you'll never get back that's going to be spent in the restroom for a while. And apparently that's what this guy does in the name of health. No Dr. Fauci said of approval or rejection yet. That segment was very juvenile. And yet I can't help it. But yeah, if you want to read the pun galore article, it is out there for you to find. I also do like this, shifting gears quite a bit. I was tempted to make a joke there, but I didn't want to get in trouble. The Alliance of Unpopular Men is a real group. They're in Tokyo, I guess. They got together for Christmas to protest. Now, it's interesting to me, this story, because the Alliance has more than a couple guys in it. And they claim that they're unpopular. They claim that because of that, they didn't have anybody to spend Christmas with. So they protested the holiday because they didn't have loved ones to be around. But here's the problem. They got together as a group on Christmas and did something together. I kind of feel like they defeated their argument. If you find enough like-minded people out there, enough people who believe in or, act like or who have life experiences similar to yours, whatever it might be, then this group, and by the way, they actually, better name for them. I got their title wrong the first time. It's the Revolutionary Alliance of Unpopular Men. I think they're just a group of friends now. I think that they could be considered popular amongst each other, that they probably can go ahead and live that life. They were complaining about not having significant others in their lives to spend the holiday with, too. And that challenge, I don't know how to fix that, unless there's maybe another alliance out there of women interested in unpopular men, which might be a thing. Actually, with like a minute left, that reminded me of something that I have almost no time to talk about. Steve Harvey got in trouble on social media for putting something out just before Christmas, a video, and I should play it for you, but again, we're running out of time, where he said that if you want to be happy in life, and he was speaking to women, marry or date an ugly man. And people got so mad at what he said and how he said it, and the fact that, a man who, like this, I guess, Alliance of Unpopular Men, might be very grateful to be in a relationship with you and might treat you great for being in a relationship with you. It's terrible. It's a terrible way to talk or say anything in the world of comedy on social media. I thought it was funny. I honestly, and I think a lot of people probably thought it was funny, and not because, I thought it was being mean to anyone, but because it's probably true. And it's not just about looks, it's about a bunch of things. All right, on that note, Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show.